I came to build a bed. I didn't expect her to make me question if I ever wanted to leave. I didn't expect anything when I pulled up to her house. Just another quick job. A few hours of assembling a bed frame, maybe some polite small talk, and I'd be gone. But the moment I knocked on her door, something shifted. She opened it slowly, not rushed, like someone who doesn't hurry for anyone. She stood barefoot on the wooden floor, wearing a loose white linen shirt and faded jeans. Her hair tied back in a way that looked careless but elegant. There was this kind of quiet confidence in her. Not loud, not forced, just there. The kind that fills a space without needing to prove anything. The late afternoon sun streamed through the windows behind her, spilling soft golden light across the living room. It wrapped around her like a warm frame. The house smelled faintly of sandalwood and something floral. Maybe the candles burning on a nearby shelf. She smiled, not in a practiced way, but the kind of smile that reaches the eyes. "You're here for the bed?" she asked, and even that simple line carried warmth. I nodded, stepping inside, instantly aware of the creak of the floor beneath my boots. For a second, I felt out of place. Too loud, too heavy for a house like this. She closed the door behind me softly, her movements slow and deliberate. As she led me to the room where the bed frame waited in a half-open box, I caught myself watching the way she moved. Steady, unhurried, like someone who'd long stopped trying to impress anyone. There was grace in that. She gestured toward the pieces of wood on the floor. "It's all here. At least I hope it is," she said with a quiet laugh. That laugh was low and warm, and it lingered in the air even after she stopped. I knelt to start unpacking, but I could feel her presence even when she wasn't speaking. She didn't hover, didn't fill the silence with nervous chatter. She just was there, watching, not in a way that made me uncomfortable, but in a way that made the quiet feel different. Every sound felt sharper. The rustle of cardboard, the soft creak of floorboards, the distant hum of a ceiling fan. I told myself it was just another job, but something about her house, about her, made it feel heavier. Not in a bad way, in the way quiet things sometimes feel when they start to matter. She offered me water, and when I reached for the glass, our fingers brushed. It was nothing, just skin against skin for half a second, but I felt it longer than I should have. She noticed too, not with a startled look, but with that small, knowing curve of her mouth. I didn't come here to feel anything, but standing in her house, with her warm presence wrapped around the silence, I already knew. This wasn't going to be just another job. The bedroom was brighter than I expected. Afternoon light slipped through the half-drawn curtains, painting soft lines across the walls and floor. The box with the bed frame lay open in the middle of the room. Bolts, wooden panels, and tools scattered like a puzzle waiting to be solved. It wasn't a big space, but it felt alive in a quiet way. She lingered in the doorway at first, leaning her shoulder lightly against the frame. I could feel her eyes on me, not in a way that demanded attention, but in a way that made me aware of every movement I made. The way my hands turned the wrench, the way I crouched down to fit the first panel. The silence wasn't empty. It was the kind of silence that has weight, that holds its breath between two people. "You do this often?" she asked, breaking it softly. "Yeah," I said, glancing up at her. "Mostly small jobs. Furniture, repairs, simple stuff." She tilted her head slightly, like she was studying something about me I couldn't quite see. "You make it look easy." I smiled without meaning to. "It's easier when someone's watching," I admitted. Her eyebrows lifted slightly, amused, maybe a little curious. She stepped into the room, barefoot again, her steps soft against the floor. She didn't walk around me. She walked closer, then sat down cross-legged near the box, like she belonged right there. I felt the air shift when she did. The scent of lavender came with her. Faint, like something from a warm bath earlier that day. Her hair was still loosely tied, a few strands falling forward when she leaned toward the wooden frame. "Want to hand me that screw bag?" I asked. She reached for it, fingers brushing against mine for just a heartbeat. Her touch was light but deliberate. She didn't pull away fast. She looked at me briefly, a quiet look, not shy but present. said more than words could have. The room seemed smaller after that. Not because the walls moved in, but because we were suddenly closer than we had any right to be. She started asking little things, where I learned this kind of work, whether I liked it, how long I'd been in the city. I answered with easy honesty, not overthinking like I usually do. There was something about her calmness that made honesty feel simple. At one point, she leaned in to look at the joint I was tightening. Her hair brushed against my arm, soft as silk. She didn't apologize. She didn't have to. I just felt the warmth of her shoulder next to mine and heard her breathing, steady, close, real. I told myself this was just a woman watching a man build a bed. But in that quiet room, with our hands nearly touching and her soft voice slipping between the silence, it felt like more. The air was changing, slowly, quietly, and part of me didn't want to stop it. The room felt different once the base of the bed was set. I couldn't say exactly what changed. Maybe it was the way the sun had lowered a little more, how the light had turned from gold to a softer amber. Or maybe it was the way she'd started moving around the room with an ease that made it feel like I wasn't just a stranger working here anymore. She disappeared into the kitchen for a moment, and I kept tightening the bolts along the side rails. Then I heard the gentle clink of glasses before I saw her. She came back carrying 2 stemless wine glasses, one in each hand, like it was the most natural thing in the world. "You've earned this," she said, handing me one with a quiet smile. "At least a little break." I hesitated, wiping my hands on the back of my jeans. "I usually don't drink when I work." She tilted her head, amusement flickering across her face. "You're not operating heavy machinery, just building something that holds people." I laughed softly, taking the glass. The wine was cool against my skin, condensation gathering along the sides. When I took a small sip, the taste was smooth, something soft and red, with a warmth that settled low and slow. She sat on the edge of the mattress, the unassembled headboard propped against the wall behind her. Her movements were unhurried, confident but quiet. She tucked one leg beneath the other, the fabric of her jeans creasing softly. I sat on the floor opposite her, my back against the wall. It wasn't planned, it just felt easier than standing. She took a slow sip, watching me over the rim of her glass. There was nothing flirtatious in the obvious sense. No forced looks. But there was something steady about the way her eyes lingered just a second too long. "So," she said lightly, "is this your big dream? Building furniture for mysterious women in quiet houses?" I grinned. "You'd be surprised how many mysterious houses there are." Her laugh was soft but warm, the kind that settles into you and makes you want to hear it again. It filled the small space easily. She leaned back slightly, one hand pressed into the mattress for balance. "Don't get too comfortable," I warned playfully, lifting my wrench. "The bed's not ready to hold anyone yet." Her smile didn't fade. "That's okay. I'm just enjoying the view." She said it so casually that I almost missed the weight behind it. My pulse gave a small, traitorous jump. The rest of the conversation drifted, not deep, not trivial. She talked about how she'd lived here for almost 10 years. About how quiet nights sometimes felt heavier than they should. I told her a little about moving around too much, about not staying in one place long enough to make it feel like home. Somewhere between her second sip of wine and my nervous laugh, the space between us started to feel less like a line and more like a pull. The bolts and wood and work were still there, but they'd faded behind something slower, quieter, and real. By the time I reached the last few bolts, the house had grown quiet in that way it does at dusk, when the world outside slows down, but everything inside a room feels louder. The drill's soft hum, the scrape of metal against wood, even the steady rhythm of my own breathing felt amplified. She was no longer across the room. She had moved closer, little by little, without either of us really acknowledging it. At first, she stood beside the bed frame, handing me a screw or a washer now and then. Then she knelt down, her hair falling over one shoulder as she steadied the wooden panel I was tightening. "Here?" she asked, her voice low, calm. "Yeah," I said, my hand brushing against hers as I adjusted the corner. It wasn't intentional. It didn't feel like an accident either. Her skin was warm, soft, and it lingered in my mind longer than it should have. The room smelled faintly of lavender and sandalwood, but now her perfume was threaded through it, subtle, elegant, the kind that doesn't announce itself but leaves a trace. I leaned forward, tightening the final bolt near the headboard. She leaned in at the same time, and suddenly we were shoulder to shoulder, close enough that I could hear the quiet rhythm of her breathing. Neither of us moved away. The air between us wasn't filled with conversation anymore. It was filled with something softer, heavier. She laughed under her breath. Not a big laugh, just a quiet exhale that brushed warm against my ear. "You're really focused," she said. "I don't want your bed collapsing the first night," I managed, though my voice sounded different to my own ears. She tilted her head slightly, and in my peripheral vision, I caught the curve of her smile. Her hand stayed on the wooden rail a moment too long. My knuckles grazed against her skin again, and this time I didn't pull back right away. She didn't either. The mattress rustled softly as she shifted her weight, her knee brushing against my thigh. A subtle touch, almost nothing, but enough to make everything else disappear for a second. I tightened the last bolt, but my focus wasn't on the frame anymore. It was on the warmth beside me. When I sat back to check my work, she stayed close. Neither of us said much. We didn't need to. The silence wasn't awkward. It was charged, like a low hum in the air, alive and aware. For a moment, the world narrowed to that small patch of floor. The soft light spilling through the curtains, the smell of wood and wine, the sound of her breathing near mine. It was a small, ordinary room, but it felt like a turning point. I came here to build something solid. Somehow, without meaning to, something softer was being built between us, too. I tightened the final bolt, gave the frame one last check, and exhaled. The job was done. The bed stood solid, steady, the way it should. My hand still smelled faintly of wood and metal, a mix I'd always liked. Clean, practical. But the air in that room wasn't practical anymore. She was standing behind me, arms loosely crossed, leaning against the wall with a quiet ease. The soft amber light from the lamp pooled across the floor, casting a warm glow on her face. It was evening now. The world outside the window had dimmed into blue-gray shadows, but here, in this room, everything felt sharper, warmer. "Well," I said, running my palm along the edge of the bed frame, "that should do it." She didn't answer right away. She just watched me, her gaze calm but unwavering. Then a small, almost playful smile curved at the corners of her mouth. "You should test it before you go," she said lightly. The words hung there, soft, unassuming, but they landed differently. It wasn't just about the bed, and we both knew it. For a second, I froze, my fingers still resting on the wood. She tilted her head, her hair slipping forward across her shoulder. The way she said it wasn't flirtatious in a loud way. It was quieter, braver even. "You want me to—" I started. She interrupted gently, a faint laugh under her breath. "I mean, someone should make sure it doesn't fall apart." Her voice carried that kind of calm that isn't actually calm. The kind that hides a pulse that's beating faster than it wants to admit. I nodded slowly, stepping closer. The floor creaked softly beneath my boots. She didn't move. I lowered myself onto the edge of the mattress, pressing my weight down. The bed didn't make a sound. It was steady, but my chest wasn't. She stepped forward, until she stood in front of me. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that I could feel her warmth through the space between us. I looked up at her. The light caught the fine lines at the corners of her eyes. Not flaws, just stories. "This might be the most thorough inspection I've ever done," I said quietly. Her laugh was soft, almost breathless. She sat down beside me, slow and deliberate. The mattress dipped under her weight, and the faint shift brought us just a little closer than the air was ready for. Neither of us spoke after that. We just sat there, side by side, our knees almost touching, her perfume a quiet thread in the air between us. The job was done. I should have been packing up my tools. But instead, I sat there on the edge of a bed that suddenly felt like more than just a piece of furniture. The silence wasn't asking questions anymore. It was offering something, and whether I was ready or not, I felt myself leaning closer to the answer. The room felt smaller now. Not physically, the walls hadn't moved, the bed was exactly where I'd built it, but something about the air between us had changed. Heavier, closer, more honest. She sat beside me on the edge of the bed, one hand loosely resting on the mattress, the other on her lap. I could feel the slight dip in the mattress from where her weight met mine. It was nothing, and yet it was everything. Our knees brushed lightly when either of us shifted. Neither of us pulled away. I stared down at my hands, at the faint smudges of wood dust on my skin. I should have stood up. I should have said, "Job done," and headed for the door. But my body had other plans. I stayed. "You're quiet," she said softly. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. Just trying not to mess up a perfectly good bed. Her laugh was quiet, low in her chest. "I don't think that's what you're worried about." I looked up then. Her eyes caught the lamplight, warm, steady, and far too easy to get lost in. She wasn't teasing me. She was seeing me, and that was far more dangerous. She shifted a little closer, her shoulder brushing against mine. "It wasn't accidental. You've been careful the whole time," she said. "Not just with the bed. With me, too." My throat tightened because she wasn't wrong. Every word I'd spoken since I walked through her door had been measured. Every step calculated, like I was trying not to step on a line I couldn't cross back over. "Maybe I don't want to get it wrong," I admitted, my voice lower than I intended. Her hand moved, just slightly, resting on the mattress between us. Palm open, close enough that if I shifted even an inch, my fingers would find hers. Her breathing was steady, but there was a softness in it, the kind that comes with letting your guard down. "It's not wrong to feel something," she said quietly. That sentence didn't fall between us. It settled. I turned my hand slowly, until the side of my fingers grazed hers. Her skin was warm. She didn't pull away. Instead, she tilted her head just enough to meet my eyes. And in that single, suspended second, neither of us hid behind polite distance anymore. I could feel my heartbeat against the quiet of the room. I could hear hers in the way her breath caught, just barely. "You don't have to run away," she whispered. I wasn't sure if she was talking about leaving the house, or about everything else I'd been avoiding. My fingers inched closer, brushing fully against hers now. She responded by gently hooking one of her fingers over mine. It was the smallest touch, but it felt louder than anything either of us could have said. The job had ended an hour ago, but this moment was just beginning. For a long moment, neither of us said anything. The night had settled softly outside. A deep, calm kind of quiet that makes even the smallest sounds feel bigger. The crickets hummed somewhere in the distance. A soft breeze pressed against the curtains, letting in just enough cool air to make the warm glow of the lamp feel almost too intimate. We were still sitting on the bed, our hands close, fingers brushing like they'd been holding that touch for years instead of minutes. She hadn't moved. Neither had I. I glanced at her. Her head was tilted back slightly, her gaze fixed somewhere on the ceiling, as if she was trying to steady herself in this moment. The loose strands of hair around her face framed her like a portrait the light didn't want to let go of. "I didn't plan for this," she said quietly. "I know," I whispered. There was no need for explanations. The space between us already held all the things we didn't say out loud. All the silent beats, all the shared breaths. She turned her face toward me then, slowly, like she wanted the moment to last longer than it should. Our eyes met, and for the first time all night, neither of us looked away. The air between us felt fragile and strong at the same time, like something that could shatter if pushed, but could hold the world if left untouched. I shifted just slightly, close enough that our shoulders touched again. She let out a soft exhale. Not a nervous one this time, a settled one. A quiet kind of surrender. Without overthinking it, she leaned her head gently against my shoulder. Her hair brushed against my jaw, soft as silk. The warmth of her body met mine, and everything inside me went still. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I just felt it, the weight of her trust, the softness of the moment. "This doesn't have to mean anything complicated," she murmured. I nodded slowly. "I know." But the truth was, it did mean something. Maybe not forever. Maybe not the way stories are supposed to end. But right here, right now, it meant everything. We lay back on the bed, not fully, just enough that our shoulders sank into the mattress, our hands still between us, fingers loosely tangled like two people who didn't need to name whatever this was. The ceiling above us was quiet, still, just like the rest of the house. She let out a soft laugh, almost a whisper. "You really did build a good bed." I smiled. I had good company. Outside, the night moved on without us. Inside, time didn't matter. When I finally stood at her doorway, shoes in hand, the air was cooler. She walked me there, close enough that I could feel her warmth even when we weren't touching. At the door, our hands met again, this time on purpose. A small squeeze, a quiet understanding. No promises, no dramatic endings. Just two people, changed by a night neither of them expected. As I walked down her front steps, the world felt the same. But I didn't. If this story made you feel something, that quiet pull between two people who didn't see it coming, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more slow burn romance, and share it with someone who believes in unexpected connections. Sometimes the softest nights leave the loudest echoes.